Howdy, Five Guy listeners. Welcome back to the Five Guys podcast. I'm Dom. He's Chris. And today we will be recapping Monday's pod about the 30 rules and when to use them regarding finance. That's what we're doing here. We're a Five Guys podcast, financial independence. You know it. I know it. How everybody knows it. With that being said, howdy, Chris. How was your week? How are you?
My week's been great. I've been doing a lot of jujitsu every single day. Every day this week, been going to jujitsu, working to build out some more stuff for the business. But I'm really excited today to talk about our 30 must-know money rules that people should definitely obey 100%. I mean, they're rules for a reason, so you stick with them. You do it, no matter if they contradict each other, no matter if it doesn't work for your life, because someone on TikTok told you to do it, so you have to. That's the way the world works, I think.
Dude, your sarcasm voice is tough. Oh, yeah. So if you didn't watch Monday's pod, a lot of the rules contradicted themselves, right? And you're probably thinking, Dom, why would you guys put out a podcast that, rule number 2, save 30%. Rule number 7, save more than that or less than that. It's like, why would you put out rules to contradict yourself? We're trying to make the point that personal finance is personal. Not all the information that we're going to give you, you should do. Plain and simple, right, Chris? Am I off on that? If I'm off.
No, I think you're exactly right. But I mean, I would say if you're going to listen to our podcast, we have nuanced discussions, and we always preface it with like, hey, this might work if you're in this situation. But what I don't like is when you go on to also other social medias that people say, this is the only way all the time. Mm-hmm. And that's why I wanted to bring these 30 rules from TikTok, from other financial quote unquote gurus who tell you that these are the rules every single time, to show you that if something's a rule that works 100% of the time, then how can there be another rule that works 100% of the time that completely contradicts it?
Absolutely. And these rules are not absolute. And from what we know, only Siths deal in absolutes. So
first Star Wars reference. Ding. There's one.
There it is. We're not going to go a podcast week without mentioning a Star Wars reference. I have to. I mean, we had a Ron Burgundy reference last pod. We love movies around here, so I had to do it. I'm sorry if you don't know Star Wars and you're like, what is a Sith? Just skip 30 seconds. I'm sorry. Okay, so yeah, shall we get into it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
So what I was thinking is when I really wanted to explain these rules to people, I wanted to give you guys all a framework to think about finance. And if you don't understand the framework that finance kind of works in, you're going to take every single one of these rules as law and think like they're 100% true. And, one of the other things that I do, aside from the podcast and being a financial advisor and a financial coach and all the other crap that I do, is I'm a jiu-jitsu coach as well. So I teach people, adults and kids, jiu-jitsu. And when I think about this, I think about someone walking in to the jiu-jitsu gym for the first time as a white belt. And just, if I was just to say like, be free, go and fight people. Let's see what happens. Someone's going to get hurt. Either the new person who doesn't know what they're doing is going to punch someone in the face or kick somebody or hurt somebody, or more than likely they're going to get themselves hurt. So that's why it's so important to give you a rough guideline of like, hey, these are the positions. These are ways that you can move your body. These are ways you shouldn't move your body. And then from there, you go and find what's going to work best for you. So I'm not trying to give you a rule. I'm trying to give you rules. I'm trying to give you a foundation that you can build on, because only once you have a stable foundation can you see which quote unquote rules or guidelines can be broken and in which ways they can be broken. So in jiu-jitsu and in wrestling too, I used to be a wrestler. Whenever you're down in turtle position, which is down, in wrestling, you always want to have dynamic toes, which means you're on your toes and then you're on your knees. When people wrestle or go do jiu-jitsu or wrestling against me, they'll see that sometimes my toes will be up and sometimes my toes will be down. But then they'll say like, but Chris, there's a rule that says you always need to have dynamic toes. And I'm like, yes, that is a general rule that works 60%, maybe 80% of the time. But there is still another time where it doesn't work. And there's no rule that is so absolute that it works 100% of the time.
So basically what you're saying is, in order to discern which rule works for you, you have to have a great common knowledge of really the entire financial arena in order to know which ones you can bend and which ones. And I'm not talking about, you don't got to go to get a PhD in finance.
Yes.
But a lot of what we're talking about today and what we talked about on Monday, the requirement that is needed to make these types of decisions, most importantly, is common sense.
Yes.
Common sense. I mean, we could break down all of these rules, and if you don't have common sense, it's not going to work.
100%. I think if it doesn't pass the gut check, you need to see why. You need to ask why. And I think too many people, when it comes to money, are afraid to ask why. And the reason they're afraid to ask why is because they don't want to look stupid. Because most people, when it comes to financial stuff, they say things with such utter confidence of like, this is the rules. And if you don't stick to the 50-20-30 rule, you're a fucking idiot. That it should never be like that, because that's not the way it is. And if someone is so gung-ho and saying this is the only way you can do it, then they don't know, or they can't see the world from anything else than their one objective view. And I think we've talked about this before, like this is water, in that there's two fish swimming, and as one of the two younger fish pass an older fish, the older fish goes, "How's the water today, boys?" And one of the younger fish after they pass go, "What the hell is water?" And just like that, we only know our own thoughts and our own brains. And for us, our existence, our frame of reference is water. But we can't even conceive that other people have different variations of water, or they have different ways of conceiving the world, different ways they've interacted with the world. So for me to tell you that I live off of, I don't know, a 10% credit utilization rule, and I never break that, that doesn't mean that it applies to you 100% of the time. There are general guidelines, like you don't want to go over 30% or it's going to ding your credit score. But if you have to go over 30%, that's okay. If you can go lower, that's also okay. But you have to understand the way broadly, because unfortunately, every single person on TikTok is just proclaiming shit as if it is doctrine, when in truth, there is no doctrine in terms of personal finance. Everyone's trying to figure it out as they're moving forward in life, because things are constantly changing. There is no one strategy that always works. Do you know who Benjamin Graham is?
Yes. Would you want to give a little synopsis of him?
So Benjamin Graham is the godfather of modern day value investing. He was Warren Buffett's mentor back in the day. So he wrote an amazing book. It's called Securities Analysis. And that book was his whole thesis on how to value stocks for less than they're worth, and how to value a stock, and then how to buy it with an intrinsic level of, what's it called? A decreased level of, what am I trying to say? How to find intrinsic value and then buy it at a depressed price from intrinsic value.
Okay.
And it was supposed to be like the book to end all books when it came to personal finance. This is how you determine what a company is worth, and you can use it moving forward. Well, there were 4 versions of the book Securities Analysis, and every single version of that book, which is supposed to be the definitive book, had completely different equations, because every single time the world had changed, and what worked in the previous book no longer worked in the new book. So, like I said on the podcast, we only have the way that reality did work. So when I work with people, what I'm trying to do is figure out how much money are we making, how much money are we spending, and can we control these two things? If we're just focused on hoping that our investments all work out for us, I want to make sure that in 99 different realities, you're going to be successful in 100 different realities. You will be successful in 99 of them, by focusing on the 80% that we can control, rather than focusing on everything having to go right for it to work out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if you can focus on the big numbers, right, not worry so much about the little numbers, you're going to be in a good spot. You don't want to focus on the small numbers. And I think that's one of the issues I had with one of the rules. It was the credit utilization and the credit card one towards the end. I think it was in the
15-10 rule.
Yeah,
that was called the debt management rule.
It was focusing on the 15% and the 10%, rather than focusing on the big chunk that really changed it. And it was like the 35% is the payment history, and the other 30% was the utilization. Combined, that's 65%. You should focus on the 65%, not the, what was the other? It was like the 25%. Yeah. Come on. Like, and that's what I'm talking about. Common sense. When you go, not just on the podcast either, when you go on social media, when you're taking information from anybody, even from us. And Chris is licensed. He's a very smart guy, runs his own company, very, very successful, right? But we don't know you, right? We talk about the viewer mailbag every time. Wish we had more information. Wish we had more knowledge on his life, because the more information you have, the more fine-tuned the suggestions and the advice can be, right? We're swinging for the fences here. We're trying to go towards everybody in a very specific way. So it's just have some common sense, That's all that's what I'm preaching today.
something I found myself saying a lot more with my clients recently has been, there are no solutions, just trade-offs in all of life, but especially when it comes to personal finance. There are no solutions, only trade-offs. So when someone says, and I remember it used to piss me off when I was learning about finance, like, what's the right investment? And you would always get the answer, it depends. And I would always be like, no, there has to be a right investment. There has to be one that works 100% of the time, but there isn't. There are only trade-offs. If you want to have the upside growth, then we need to go into equities and we need to have a bunch of stocks. But that also means in the future, because no one knows what the future holds, that means it can go up a bunch, but it could also go down a bunch. Or someone's be like, well, what about annuities? Like, does annuity work? It depends on the situation. If we want the annuity, then that means we're going to get limited downside, yes, but there also limits our upside. So every single situation is so nuanced that there is no, yes, I can't say yes, I can't say no. I always have to say it depends, because it 100% depends, because there are no solutions. There's only trade-offs. What might be a trade-off for you that you're willing to accept is not a trade-off that someone else is willing to accept. I think about this a lot I recently had a client who was, someone was trying to sell her an annuity, and she came to me. She's like, "Oh, the salesperson told me that it has has this long-term care thing on it, and that's going to pay me this much money for this time of year, and all of this stuff." And I told her, and I had to break down to her, everything that person told you is correct, and everything that person told you is completely wrong for your situation. So for her, it was going to be like, "Oh yeah, this thing gives me an increased amount of money for disability in case I need to go into an assisted care home." And I told her, yeah, if we put in $60,000, then that means you're going to get what? If you need to go into an assisted care facility, $50 a week for assisted care, that's not going to cover anything. And that also is going to lock up your $60,000 for the next 10 to 12 years. Are you willing to accept that trade-off? It's not a solution, it's a trade-off. What are you willing to do or give for that?
You're 100% right. And, I know a lot of what we talk about on the podcast is finance. But that goes for life too. Everything in life is a trade-off. I don't want to go to the gym today. Well, tomorrow I'm not going to be as strong, as healthy. Right? I go to the gym today. Tomorrow I'll be stronger. I don't save for tomorrow. I won't have anything for tomorrow. Life is a trade-off, and it sucks. I have to trade my time for money, right? I go to a job. I do a job. They pay me for what I'm worth, right? Life is a trade-off. It sucks.
Yeah, and you are pursuing like doing your own side business, and that comes with the trade-off too. You have your own business. Now you don't have money that you guarantee is going to come in. You don't have benefits. You don't have disability. You don't have term life insurance through the company. You don't have a stable job. You don't have any of those things. You lose all those things. There is a trade-off. When you are the owner of your own company, you're mired in uncertainty all the time, constantly concerned, constantly worried that what happens if something goes wrong, especially if you're a good leader. When you're just an employee, well, you don't have to deal with that, but now you have to deal with a shitty boss. And there's always a trade-off. There is no one solution. And I've talked about it. I'm not sure if I talked about it before, but there's three ways I think in being able to be like good at making money. And all three ways are valid. And each one of the people on these three paths think they're absolutely right. And they spout that as gospel. Number one is the investor. Number two is the entrepreneur or the hustler. And number three is the optimizer. So the first person, the investor, they look at the stock market at 7, 9%, and they go, that's stupid. I'm getting 20 to 25% every year. I invest in houses, housing market, oil and gas, whatever it is. And my way for making money is the right way because it works for me every single time. Then there's the entrepreneur who looks at the investor and looks at the optimizer and say, that's stupid. Rather than investing all of my money or saving a bunch of my money, I'm just going to go and build something and put it out into the world, take on the uncertainty of life, and I'm going to succeed and make $1 million or make $1 bajillion like Mike Zuckerberg. And then there's the optimizer. Person that says, I'm going to work a normal job or work at the best job that I possibly can. I'm going to constantly try to improve myself in terms of how much money I can make. I'm going to try to improve myself and how much money I can save. And over time, I know that I will be wealthy with enough time and dedication. All three of these ways are good ways to make money, and all three of them work. The entrepreneur works, the investor works, and the optimizer works. But only one way is guaranteed. I can tell you exactly what you can go to a 13F. You can see exactly what Warren Buffett has bought every single year for the past however many years. You can see every single one of them. That doesn't mean you have the right temperament, the right timing, the right ability to sell. I can tell you exactly what Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates have done. That does not mean you're inside the right time. That does not mean you have the right talent. That doesn't mean that you have the right turf for them to be able to succeed like they did. Only the optimizer is a path that I can guarantee works because it has worked for millions of other people if they're willing to put in the time, the effort, and the work to see it through. So I think that's why there's so much things that go wrong when people say, oh, that's stupid if you do this or that's stupid if you do that. It's because they're only seeing the world from their one frame of reference, and they can't accept that there are other frames of reference that also work. When we talked about cognitive biases, people hate when there is things that aren't definitive. People will go whatever they can to say, like, my way is right and we're done with this game. I don't want to talk about it anymore. We hate to have cognitive dissonance. We need things to be true, and we need to be true 100% of the time.
Very interesting. Very interesting indeed. I can think of people right off the bat. Robert Kiyosaki, one of them. Great book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I've heard him say that the stock market's rigged. Why would I ever do that? That's controlled. I make 20, 30, 40% with my real estate deals.
Yep.
He's the investor.
He being the investor.
Yep. I've seen others. Honestly, you don't find too many as publicly arrogant as Robert Kiyosaki.
yeah. He's really swinging for the fences, isn't he?
He really is. He's like, you know what you should invest in?
But
cattle. I'm like,
you also have to remember that for Robert Kiyosaki, that's his business. There is no rich dad. There is no poor dad. None of that was real. He was not a successful investor until he wrote his book. His book is what made him a successful investor. And now he is both an investor and an entrepreneur. The reason he has such crazy takes on things and like is so definitive is because he's not just trying to invest. He's trying to sell you a course. He's trying to sell you something. So look at someone's incentives and I'll tell you what's going to happen. His incentive is for you to buy his course, to be a part of his mastermind discussion, to be whatever it is. I'm not saying that Robert Kiyosaki is wrong all the time, because there are many things that he is 100% completely correct in. But does that mean that what he's saying is right for you?
Yeah. Having the forethought and the skepticism to really identify these things is so important. I don't know if we can teach common sense. I don't know. You can't really teach that, right?
I think it has to come with experience and just like learning and listening. But there is a nice way to learn common sense. And, I think whenever we read books or we learn from podcasts or we just learn from another person, it's you're taking the time of their life that they had to put into learning something, into learning a lesson. And I'm able to take the time from somebody's book, from their podcast that they put into something, and I'm able to multiply that time and put it into myself without having to actually put that time in my own.
Yep.
So I've been thinking a lot about that recently, of like how everything is just time. It takes time to become a good financial advisor. It takes time to learn all the stuff. And rather than me taking all the time in the world to learn all these things, I could pay somebody to take their time from them, or listen to a podcast that we put that's out into the world for free and take that information that took them so long to gain and just bring it into myself. And now I just saved myself decades of time just by reading a book, by listening to a podcast, by paying somebody for their coaching or for their
Yeah. And the way I look at it is like, for books, podcasts, educational videos, stuff like that, you're downloading knowledge. That's all you're doing. Me personally, I'll tell you about who I want to be, right? I want to be a successful investor. I want to invest in real estate. I want to be a successful real estate investor. I want to be a successful entrepreneur, right? I want to be financially free. I want to be a FI guy, Well, how do I do that? Right? I download knowledge from the world, but that's only half of it. Right? You can download all the knowledge in the world, right? The guy with the highest IQ, he's a bartender or a bouncer, right? It's not enough to just download the information. You have to act on it. And like Chris was saying, it takes time, and you're not going to learn everything you can from books, right? Elon Musk famously said, like, how did you build these rockets? He goes, I read a bunch of books on it. And he still blew up rockets, right? So a lot of it comes from trial and error. But the first step is taking in the knowledge. And what a beautiful time to be alive. That we have podcasts, audiobooks, books. Like the world's information is just available. It's crazy. And we're as dumb as we can be. And we're as dumb as we've ever been. I don't know.
I think it's amazing, right? Like, I like to always think back to like The Matrix, right? Remember that scene where he comes up, he goes, I know Kung Fu? It's because he was actually able to download that information and then actually have it readily available. But you can go and you can like, so like I could give you the definitive jujitsu book.
Yep.
That does not mean that you can step onto a mat and beat somebody. Like, it's just, you have to implement into your life. Same with listening to this podcast. You can listen to the podcast. Oh yeah, I need to do these things. But if you're not implementing, if you're not practicing, if you're not testing those muscles, you're never going to get anywhere. It's a part of life. And that's just, it is. I think so many people are looking for the easy out. I just want it to be easy. And when you were born, no one slapped your ass, got you to cry and say, now your life is going to be easy. That has never been told to anybody. Life is meant to be hard. The first noble truth of Buddhism is that life is suffering.
Mm-hmm.
And they use the word dukkha, which is a Sanskrit, so it doesn't actually have like a perfect translation into English. Suffering, I would say like a better word might be like miscontent. Like, it's just like you never feel good. Like, you never feel like you're there, which I think we can all say it feels right. We never feel like we're satisfied. We're never where we want to be. Even when we achieve it, the goalpost moves and it moves and it moves and it moves.
Yeah, if you're wanting an easy life, you're already in the wrong framework. I think it's not incorrect to want a peaceful life. But to have an easy life, again, it's a trade-off. Everything in life is a trade-off. If you want an easy life, someone at some time in history is going to have to pay for that hardship. Mm-hmm. Whether that's your children. It's like, oh, wow, I want an easy life now that I'm retired. It's like, well, you don't have the money to retire. Well, my kids will take care of me, or something like that. So I think we talked about it, not last. You got a thought?
Let's riff on that. Let's riff on that idea. So even people who are like, man, I just wish that it was easy for me. I wish I was born into wealth and didn't have to try hard. Mm-hmm. Well, that means that for you to be born into wealth, that someone had to put in the work in the past. Someone had to make the sacrifice in the past for you to be able to be where you are. And so many of us, we look and say like, oh man, I just wish I had money like other people. I wish I was a trust fund kid. But how many of those people that are trust fund kids, how much of that money is generationally passed down? Very, very few, in fact. Very, very few. I think one of the worst things you can do is take away someone's ability to learn how to work and learn how to deal with grit, learn how to deal with adversity. Because then when they actually go into the real world and they realize that the world is not sunshine and rainbows, they crumble. And then that means that, like, yes, you might have had an easy life, but now you just passed it down to your kids having a hard life. What's that old quote? Like, rough times make strong men, strong men make good times make weak men make tough times, and the cycle repeats itself. Yeah. At some point, someone's going to have to put in the work, and we can all want to defer it and just want instant gratification and all the hope and all the dreams without having to put in the work. But that's not how life is. Mm-hmm. We always need to try. We always need to keep on striving. Jordan Peterson said, human beings were born and meant to walk uphill. We're meant to struggle. The moment that you stop struggling is when you get soft. And when you get soft, people often, it's over for them. Like, they don't keep on advancing. That doesn't mean that you can't find inner peace. You should strive for inner peace too. Yeah. But also realize that maybe it's an illusion.
Yeah. It's interesting, the thought of inner peace, because, you might go your whole life pushing yourself to be more. When does the inner peace arrive? It's like you said, it could be an illusion, some reach enlightenment, but it might take 20 years, or longer.
And I would say, even if you do reach enlightenment, nothing changes. There's an old Buddhist saying that's, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
Yep. The world will keep spinning.
The world keeps spinning, and you have to continue doing the exact same thing over and over again. And I think, like, I was very lucky when I was younger in that I didn't find financial independence until later. Before that, I found Stoicism and Buddhism.
Yeah.
And that started taking me down a different rabbit hole. And then luckily I was already in psychology and like a psychology major and all that stuff. So that took me down a very different like woo-woo rabbit hole that once I was able to find finance too, and I was able to merge these two things, that's how I was able to find the truth and say like, yes, you can make more money and all that thing. And you can constantly strive for more and more and more, but you're never going to reach that ultimate goal. The real important thing is how do you feel about yourself when you're by yourself, and can you find inner peace and be okay with what is? That's okay to strive for more, but can you be happy with what is? Because at that point, that's when you're financially independent. Once your needs or what your wants exceed your needs.
Yeah. I know we're riffing a lot on today's podcast. I think today's episode is going to be a lot of philosophy. It's going to be a lot of not so much the money side of finance, but how you interact with it and how you live with it and how you live without it. Money is just a tool. I would highly recommend not to worship it. I love my stove. I make breakfast on it. I make lunch on it. I make dinner on it. It's just a tool. I don't think about it when I'm at work. Oh man, my stove, man. Love that tool. I'm not thinking about it. Right? I'm not saying you shouldn't think about money. Don't glorify it. Like there's more important things to life than money. Right?
I think too many people, they run everything through the frame of reference of I need more money. And once I have more money, it will make me happy.
Mm-hmm.
And everything is under that guise of once I have more of that, it'll make me happy. But just like we talked about with trade-offs earlier, if you decide to forego or to make more money, that means you're going to forgo a different part of your money. I think the worst thing that people can do is come home at the end of the day with a pocket full of dollars to a house full of people that don't know him or know them.
Yeah.
So if you want to forego that, I mean, have you seen the show Succession?
Oh, I love their soundtrack. But I've never seen the show. Is it good? Have you seen it? You like it?
I've only watched the first season of it, but it's
Okay.
really that like, yes, you can build this amazing empire and have all this money. But at the end of your life, if you don't have your family, you're not going to look back and be like, at least I had all this money. You're going to look back on like the relationships you had, the people that you touched and helped in order to make them better people.
Mm-hmm.
And that show, I think, is just one of those shows that like shows you like you can work and try to be more and more money. There's an interview with Elon Musk where he was talking about all the sacrifices he's put into it. And he breaks down, he cries during the interview. And he says like, yes, I've made all this money, but I have no relationship with most of my kids. I have 6 ex-wives. I don't talk to my family, like even his like mother anymore.
Mm-hmm.
He had like such a terrible relationship with his father. Like he is dealing with demons. And the reason he does all of this stuff is to maybe make his dead father proud of him. And like, is that where you want to live your life? Constantly striving, Elon, to make your dead dad proud of you? Because you're never going to get there because he's gone. And I get it. Like all the more power to Elon Musk. Like praise be to Elon Musk. You are the freaking man, dude.
He's
Keep doing
awesome.
what you're doing. We need you to keep doing what you're doing.
Absolutely.
But that doesn't mean that you should idolize Elon Musk either. I idolize him in many ways, but that also means that I can see where he falters. Same with Warren Buffett. That's the reason that I am a really big fan of Charlie Munger. Because at the end of the day, Warren has had so many family issues. He's gone through multiple marriages. He has had 2 wives. One of them was like a live-in sex partner for a while with another wife. It was weird. He has like a pretty strained relationship with a lot of his kids, where I think that Charlie was better at being all around better in his life. He had a good marriage, good family, kids. He was a polymath, like a true polymath, in that he focused on a bunch of different things, not just on business. And that led him to have an amazing life, a different life, but an amazing life, and a life that I would prefer to emulate rather than just being so focused on one thing.
Yeah. And one thing I love about Charlie Munger, so this might be my favorite thing, is very wealthy, very rich, right? But a lot poorer than Warren Buffett. They're still very wealthy. But Charlie Munger knew when he had enough. And that's tough. Especially when your best friend or your coworker, I don't know if I would assume they're best friends, or I don't know.
Probably.
Is worth so much more, right? Your ego can get in play, you know. But again, it's like, would you trade your life for his? I don't think so. No, of
Yeah.
course not.
And I think it's important to say that if you want to trade life with somebody, you get all of it. You don't
Mhm.
get one aspect. You get all of it. Because the thing that made Warren Buffett so wealthy, made Elon so wealthy, made Mark Zuckerberg and Peter Thiel and all
Yep.
those people so wealthy is
Sacrifice.
every life experience they've had up until that point and beyond. So you can't be a visionary that buys Twitter, makes rockets, wants to go to Mars, made Tesla, and also not get all the daddy issues and get all of their brain never stopping, not being able to stay fit, not being able to do any of these things.
Mhm.
It's a package deal. You get all of it or you get none of it. And
Yeah.
too many people will look at that and be like, that's not fair. Like I want just that one part, but I don't want anything else. You get all of it or you get none of it. That's the way the world works.
I remember watching an interview with Elon Musk. He said, "You wouldn't want to be me." And it's true. Look how much he's hated. Look how much he's loved. He's stalked, multiple ex-wives, a lot of kids, good or bad. A lot of kids can be good. A lot of kids can be bad. You know, you're running 2 companies. Very busy guy, right? Yeah, I mean, like you said, Chris, I mean, if you want someone's life, you can't just take the good stuff, right?
Yep. And
I want to be rich. Well, again, there's a trade-off. Are you willing to sacrifice your time to gain knowledge and then more of your time for action in order to be rich? And what is rich? You know? Because I know rich to you might be different from me.
and it should be, and it
It
is. I
absolutely
guarantee
should
it.
be. Yeah.
And I think it's so tough that so many people are willing to sacrifice the intangibles of their life to have more of the tangibles. And by tangibles, I mean money. It's quantifiable. I can quantifiable. I can quantify how much money I have. And then I can directly put it against you and say, I am this much better than you in terms of money.
Yeah.
And I can put it against somebody else and say, I'm this much better than this person, or I'm this much worse than this person. But you can't quantify how good a relationship you have with your wife, how good your relationship is with your kids, how good your relationship is with your animals, how happy you are. But so many people are willing to forego all of the inquantifiable things in order to just have more quantifiable. And at the end of your life, you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have good health, good family, good people around you, does any of it really matter?
Yeah.
You know, like I have things that I say are the most important things to me in my life. And finance is number 5. Like it's way down there. You know,
Mm-hmm.
behind my family, behind my fitness, behind my friends. Money is a facilitator of all those things. But if I put money first and I let go of all these other things, yes, I may have more money than you and I may be able to spout that off and, you know, be able to drop money. But if I go home at the end of the day to no one that loves me, all that money in the world is worth nothing.
Yeah. Absolutely. That kind of reminds me of I was watching this thing. I don't know if you know the guy Ty Lopez. You know that guy?
Never heard of him.
Doesn't really matter. Entrepreneur. Uh, he was having a party, right? He's living his best life, right? You can imagine, however, that looks like to you, right? And he's chilling in the hot tub, right? And someone walks in. A friend of his walks in. Billionaire, much, 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 much more wealthy than him. Ty Lopez, still very wealthy. We'll say I don't know the exact net worth, but we'll say like 30 million, right? And he had like a chef. He has a chef, right? And he paid him like 15,000 a month, right? Private chef. And the billionaire was saying, you could save that money, you could invest it. The ROI would be this if you invested in the business and all this extra stuff. And Ty Lopez says, well, why would I want to do that? Why would I want to give up my private chef? I love having gourmet meals every night, And one person is about living in the present, and one person is about optimizing for the future. Neither are wrong, but the thing that I thought was so interesting, he was telling his the billionaire friend, he's like, I could do that, but you have to understand, like, this is the life I love, and I have a better life than you. Is it better? It's not him to decide, to each their own. A billionaire might love his life. Tai Lopez might love his life, you know? But
And
what I
that's
think
so
is
cool. That's the cool part, is that everyone's individualistic and everyone gets to, but we all compare ourselves to other people.
Mhm.
So like there is no right or wrong, just the way that you feel about it in your mind.
Yeah. Yeah. If I could train people, myself included, never compare yourself to other people, how much happier would we be? You know, we compare everything. What's my body fat percentage? How good am I at jujitsu? How many subscribers do I have? How many likes? How many videos? How much money? How healthy am I? You know, what time do I wake up? You know, what am I making at this job? You know, it's all this stuff. It's like, doesn't any of it really matter? You know, I don't want to get too philosophical, but it's so important that finance isn't correlated with happiness, but you can design a life with finance that makes you happier, right? And I'm not talking about, well, Chris, if I hit $20 million and I'm 25 years old, I could be in Dubai with supermodels. It's like, no. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about I can buy my peace now. Like kind of like how you bought your peace. Had a job you didn't like, suffer. I mean, terrible stuff. You started your own company, worked hard, built it from the ground up, bought your time back. Now your day, you know, like you said, you went to jujitsu every day this week. Every day. You love jujitsu, you know? And like, that's beautiful. That's all I could ask for everybody else, right? To find their jujitsu and work towards a goal where it's like, I can buy my time back. That's what we're trying to teach here.
I think a lot of it comes down to your intention and what's right for you, and not comparing yourself to other people, but what's right for you. Because some other people might hear my life and be like, that's so stupid. You could go and like make so much more money by doing these things. But at the end of the day, my goal is to be able to set up a time that when I have kids, that I will be home with them for the first 7 years of their life, because or for 6 years of their life, because I think that so many things are formed by that age. And that's from studying psychology and like knowing how important like that childhood development is. So if I can be there for those kids for those 6 years, then at the end of my life, like even if I fail at everything else, if I set them up to be better people and hopefully go into the world and make it a better place, then I feel that I can die, hopefully in like 40, 50 years, but like I can die happy.
Yeah.
And I know that having more money will not allow me to die happy. So I grew up in Hawaiian culture. Have I ever told you the story of the businessman and the fisherman?
I believe so. Yeah. Could I preface it? I'm kind of curious to see if it's the same story.
Sure.
The fisherman's out on the dock. He catches X amount of fish. He might catch 30, 20 fish. I don't know how much you catch as a fisherman. You know, maybe you should tell the story. You tell it because I'm going to tell it wrong. Go for it, Chris.
So there's a man who's out fishing, and he knows his spot really well, and he knows what bait to use. He knows exactly what he's doing. So he's sitting there just pulling in fish after fish after fish. And a businessman comes up to him and says, "Hey, you seem to have a pretty good system down here." And the fisherman goes, "Yeah, I've been doing this my whole life." And he goes, "Well, why do you do this?" He goes, "Oh, well, I feed my family in my village." And the businessman goes, "Well, you know, you could go ahead and you can start teaching other people how to do this and make it into a business." And then the fisherman goes, "And then what?" He goes, "Well, then you would continue to grow that business. Eventually, if the business becomes large enough, you could start to bring in shareholders. And if you bring in shareholders, you can go public." And he goes, "And then what?" He goes, "Well, if you go public, you can grow the company to be an astronomical size by teaching people how to do what you do." And then the fisherman goes, "And then what?" He goes, "Well, then you could sell all the stock and then you can have all that money." And he goes, "And then what?" And he goes, "Well, then I guess you could sit here at the dock all day and fish."
And he's already doing that. So what's the moral of the story? What can we learn from that?
Live your life based off of your life. Don't compare yourself to other people. Because for the businessman, it makes more sense to make more money. But for the fisherman, why go through all that? What is he going to sacrifice to end up in the same spot that he's already at?
Yeah.
Could he maybe get more luxuries? Yeah, he could maybe live inside a bigger house. Could he have all these other things? But he might also be giving up a lot too. There's, again, I grew up in Hawaiian culture, and in Hawaii, Hawaiians aren't trying to get more money. Like, it's about living for today and living off the land. And a lot of that's been perverted by tourists and people coming in and changing that culture. But at the end of the day, like, I think a lot of Hawaiian people know that life is meant to be lived, and money is just a small part of it. And that's probably part of the culture, because Hawaiians historically, before colonization, didn't have money. We had shells and stuff that we would trade, but a lot of it was based off of we are a collective. It's the same thing of Native Americans, that we're a collective and we do what's best for all of us, not individuals. Because individualism works really well in our current system, but the moment you get out into the bush, the moment you get out into real nature, that's when you need the collective. That's why like the military is so strong. And that's why people like join those brotherhoods and stay in those brotherhoods, because it doesn't matter what your creed is, what color skin you are, what your thought process is. At the end of the day, when it's life or death, the only thing that I care about is, do you have my back?
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I wish more people lived like the Hawaiians. That's a beautiful way to live. That's just such a beautiful way to live.
But remember, it has its trade-offs. A lot of my family members are living, a bunch of family members in one house that they've had forever and they can't move.
True.
Majority of Hawaiian people are not in Hawaii. They've all left. Majority of Hawaiians are on the mainland because they can't survive anymore where they are. They can't survive with the natural way of living. All right. Sad. I say, before I get sad, because it makes me really sad, let's move on to the next part of the 5 Friday feedback, if you don't mind.
Please.
This time,
let's do it.
Since we're talking a lot about philosophy in here, I thought we had a few different viewer mailbags, but none of them really spoke to Dominic this week. So he said, Chris, like there are some in here that we could use, but they're just not getting specific enough. So I decided, hey, how about I use a parable? And what a parable is it's a teaching story, much like the story of the fisherman that I just told. So we're going to tell another one. This parable may be fake lore. And what fake lore means is it's inauthentic folklore presented as tradition. So this was told by the Buddha, but it was told with dogs. So now this is a different story. And I like the version of the 2 wolves. And it's a Cherokee story, if it's actually a Cherokee story. So I'm going to tell you the story and we're going to riff on it and see where it goes from here. So a young boy came to his grandfather filled with anger at another boy who had done him an injustice. The old grandfather said to his grandson, "Let me tell you a story. I too at times have felt great hate for those who have taken so much with no sorrow for what they have done. But hate wears you down. Hate does not hurt your enemy. Hate is like taking poison and wishing your enemy would die. I have struggled with these feelings many times. It is as if I have 2 wolves inside of me. One wolf is good and does not harm. He lives in harmony with all around him and does not take offense when no offense is intended. He will only fight when it is right to do so and in the right way. But the other wolf is full of anger. The littlest things will send him into a fit of temper. He fights everyone all the time for no reason. He cannot think because his anger and hate are so great. It is helpless anger because his anger will change nothing. Sometimes it is hard to live with these 2 wolves inside of me because both of these wolves try to dominate my spirit." The boy then looked intently at his grandfather in his eyes and asked, "Which wolf will win, grandfather?" The grandfather smiled and said, "The one I feed."
I love a good story time. Let me tell you, that was good. That was good. I like it.
Gather around the campfire, children.
Gather around. I was painting a picture in my mind when you were reading it. I was loving it.
So in Buddhism, there's many teachings that you learn about, but a lot of them come down through parables. And the parable in Taoism it's either a story or a question that incites deeper pondering to figure out like what's the true meaning of it. So I say we talk a little bit about it. I'm not going to tell you the meaning that I have to this. Yeah. I would like you to tell me what you think the meaning is, because I don't want other people to. And this story is pretty easy. There are other ones like what's the sound of one hand clapping, like that's another one that could be misconstrued in different ways. So I don't want to tell you what I take from this, but what do you get from that?
So I think before I start, I want the listener to just pause the video, pause the stream, pause the podcast, and develop your own thought on the meaning of this parable. I don't want you to hear mine, hear Chris, and then be like, "Oh yeah, I like Dom's or I like Chris's." It's like, no. I want you to think for yourself, because it could be different for you, it could be different for me. So pause it, and just think on it. What does that story mean to you, right? And now we're unpaused, hopefully. What I see in this story has a lot, for me at least. It's not the way I am like interpreting it. It has to do with like your choices on a day-to-day aspect, right? It's funny actually, because my win of the week is kind of tied into this, unrelated. For me, it's the habits you do or the person you become, right? And the thoughts you have they influence your decisions. There was this beautiful quote. I'm going to try and remember it. It was like, thoughts are like waves. You can't stop the waves from coming. You can't stop the thoughts from coming, but you can choose which ones to focus on. And it's very important that you choose the correct thoughts to focus on, right? Choose the correct wolf to feed. Because the more you feed that specific one, the more thoughts you choose to focus on, that's the direction you're going to go, right? My goal last week, or the beginning of the week, right? I told myself, I said, you know what? This week, I'm not going to have negative thoughts. I'm not going to have it. Not against myself, not against others, not against anything, And like Chris has been teaching me in Stoicism, right? Don't let people hear you're complaining, but most importantly, don't let yourself hear yourself complain. For me, in this two wolf story, the one you focus on is the one you become. And you might say, it's just this one time. Just this one time I'm going to feed that dark wolf. This guy cut me off in traffic, man. I'm going to lay on the horn. Look at him. He cut me off. He's totally in the wrong. Now you're moving in that direction, and that's the wolf you want to feed, then that's the wolf you become, Or you could say, you know what? He cut me off. He was in the wrong. It is what it is. That's fine. It's fine. I think this talks a lot about the day-by-day, how the day-by-day decisions can affect your whole life. Because if you just, it's just this one time I'm going to lay on the horn. It's just this one time I'm going to feed this wolf, right? How many times before it's too much, That's an interesting one, though. That's an interesting one. But yeah, going back to my waves analogy, we can't stop the waves from coming, but we can choose which ones to focus on. The ones we focus on and the thoughts we have correlate to the actions we do. And what we do is who we end up becoming. So it's so important to start from zero, start from one, start from the small decision, right? How we do anything is how we do everything. Yeah, I don't know. This is an interesting one. This is an interesting story, Chris. I like this one.
Yeah, I really like this story. There's a lot of points in here that when I first heard this, it made a lot of sense to me. I used to deal a lot with anger. I used to have a lot of anger issues.
Mm-hmm.
I don't anymore. And you've known me for about a year now. And I don't think you've ever seen me get angry because I don't have it anymore.
No.
I've starved that wolf in me.
Yeah.
There's an old Buddhist saying that hatred is holding a hot coal and wishing that your enemy was burned. So by holding on to anger, by holding on to that hatred, when I first heard that, I was like, oh my God, like I get it. Like it's not hurting the other person when I'm mad at them. When I like cuss out the guy that when I cuss him out and like scream in my car when someone cuts me off, that's not doing anything to them. That's just stressing myself out. It's stressing out my wife. It's stressing out my dogs. It's stressing out everyone. And for no fucking reason. Like what's going to happen? Even if I decided like, I'm going to go and fight this person, then what? I go to jail. Like think about the second and third order consequences. And, I know I talk a lot about Taoism on the podcast. And when I first heard this, it made me think a lot about Taoism, which is an offshoot of Buddhism, of finding the middle way. And inside of all of us, there are these two extremes, the light and the dark. And maybe for some people, you're going to feed both of those at different times. And that's okay because different situations calls for dark and some situations call for good. But too many people, they live in the darkness all the time. And I think of it kind of like a NOS for a car, right? You want to be driving your car 80% in the positive, 80% in the good light. But every so often you want to have that negative, that NOS, you want to have that darkness that you can turn on every so often and use. But if you only use that NOS, you're going to blow up your engine.
Yeah.
And I've used this in my own self in that I have both these spirits, both these poles inside of me, and we all do. And they're both trying to corrupt you to their own way. And who's to say what is good and what is bad? Corruption is corruption. Whatever way you go could be correct or could be incorrect. But when I think about this, it just always brings me back to finding what is the middle way for the solution. because I've used times in my life where I try to stay in the positive, where I try to stay, I want to do this for the good of people, to help people, because it brings me joy, because it brings other people joy, because I'm good at it. But there's also times I need to turn on that dark energy and say, I want to build this company because other people told me that I was going to fail. Because I was told when I was young that I'm too stupid to do this kind of stuff. And I don't want to stay in that all the time. But every so often, it's good to turn that on when you're feeling weak, when you're feeling sore. And it's just kind of like that cookie jar analogy that David Goggins talks about, having that cookie jar that you can dig into. Now, you don't live in that cookie jar, but you know that it's there.
The analogy that Chris is referencing from David Goggins, he talks about the cookie jar, right? You know, when you were younger, your mom or grandma might have had a jar full of cookies, right? You reach your hand in there, you might get an oatmeal raisin, you might get a peanut butter, chocolate, might get an Oreo, you know, you don't know what you're going to get, right? The analogy is basically like in that cookie jar, you remember where people said you weren't smart enough, where you were doubted, where no one believed in you, where those mornings where no one saw you, no one was around. You could have skipped the workout, but you didn't. When you put in that extra rep, when no one was looking, that's within the cookie jar. So when you have those moments of, damn, dude, I don't know if I can do this, man. I don't know if I can continue. You reach into the cookie jar and be like, oh, remember when this person said you couldn't build this company? And what happened? You built it. You built it and it is successful, right? So it's that level of, that's kind of like the idea around the cookie jar analogy. So powerful. And I love what you were talking about, Chris, about you live 80% in the green. That 20%, just in case, you know, when you need it, right? I know for me, like, I live a peaceful life, you know, I'm a pretty happy guy, but I still have that 20%, right? And when I go to the gym, that's when he comes out, right? That's when, you know, when I see that weight, I'm like, up it more to a safe limit. I'm not going to kill myself. Like, just 600 pounds on the bench press just crushes me. No, I'm not getting crazy. But I think it's important. And I want to get your take on this. I think it's important to not let that 20% just sit all the time. You got to have an avenue to release that. What are your thoughts on that? In a healthy way. You know, I'm not talking about like beating someone up every third Tuesday of the month. I'm talking about a healthy way to like that. You know what I'm saying?
I agree. And it depends on how you want to frame it. Again, I'll go back to the thing that separates humans from everyone else is that we have the ability to tell stories. Mm-hmm. And it's that story that you're telling yourself. When I tell myself the story of like, oh, Chris, you're never going to succeed at this thing, I could tell myself the story that that person hated me, or I could tell myself the story that that person was genuinely trying to protect me from going out on my own and screwing up my life. Yeah. When someone called me stupid when I was younger, it's because they didn't know any better. They thought like, if I don't tell this kid that he's not going to amount to anything, that he might go through his whole life thinking that he's going to be worth something and not get there. Never tell the kid that they're stupid. By the way.
Never. That's
fucked me up for a really long time.
Yeah.
But like,
yeah. And it's weird. Life is so weird in that regard because it's like you should never ever say something so fucked up like that to a kid. Never. But at the same time, it made you into the great man that you are today. I'm not advocating for it, but it's interesting how you can take a bad situation and turn it into a fuel. You can use anything for fuel to really build yourself up. And that's what you did.
And it's the story I told myself, right? It was because I told myself the right story. I could have told myself the story that, yes, I am an idiot. That person's right. Or I could tell myself the story that, you're right. I don't understand things quickly. It does take me a really long time. Mm-hmm. But instead of tying my identity to being the smartest person in the room the fastest, I tied my identity to being the person that is the learner. I told myself the story that I am someone who can learn. And I will continue to keep on putting in the reps until I figure it out. And then I'm better than you. And that was my drive for so long, to prove not only to everyone else, but to prove to myself that I was better than other people. And that served me for a long time. And it was a few weeks ago that I told you that it was no longer serving me. And now I'm having to change a lot of that. And it's tough. It's really tough. But you have to look at that and ask yourself, like, are these qualities, are these thoughts, are these is feeding this wolf serving me? Or should I feed the other wolf? Because whatever wolf you choose to feed, you're giving that more power to defeat the other wolf.
Yeah. Yeah.
In all of life. And there's another thought in Taoism, and I'm so sorry, I can't remember the word it is. It's a Chinese word, but it's basically in life, there is the path that we're supposed to take. And we don't know what the path is supposed to be. And not until we've gone through it can we look back and say, oh, that's why this all happened. It happened like this and this and this, even though at the worst moments I fought against it. It all led me to right here at this moment. And now I understand. So whenever I'm coming up against those moments of like, God, I don't want this to be, this is so tough. I please don't let this happen. If I think on a wider perspective and try to move this story 10 years into the future, I'll look back on this moment that might be one of the hardest moments of my life and be like, thank God I went through that. It was really, really tough in the moment, but now I'm stronger for it. So I'll get a little, so I studied psychology and I never had any mental health issues growing up. I've had family members who have been depressed, bipolar, schizophrenic, all those types of things. I was very blessed, and that I just had anger issues, which, not too big of a deal, I guess, because I'm a man, and in being a man, it's acceptable that for me to have anger issues. Like no one bats an eye at that. And when I was in psychology and we would learn about people who have major depressive episodes, I could just never relate. I never understood. I was like, why do you have anxiety? Why do you have all this stuff? I remember having a girl who I worked with who had like major anxiety issues. I couldn't show up to work because of her anxiety. And I'd be like, how weak are you? Like, just get over it.
Yeah.
And then when I started my company and after I became financially independent, I, for the first time in my life, experienced depression. I experienced anxiety. And while I never want to go through those emotions again, I don't. The thing that really helped me get through that was being able to reframe and tell myself a different story and say, how lucky am I that I'm going through these things? And now I finally have an understanding as to what they are. So now when someone else comes to me and says, hey, I have anxiety, I have depression, I'm going through this stuff, I can finally say, I may not know what you're going through, but I understand you. I see you. I have been in a similar place before, and this is what I have gone through to get out of it. Recently, I've told you, and I've told the podcast, so I'll say it again. So I'm not like nothing wrong with it. Me and my wife were trying to get pregnant, and we were pregnant, and we had a miscarriage. And hardest thing in my life, one of the hardest things. But even in that moment, my wife and I were able to say, like, there are other people in this world that might not be able to make it through this. But like, how lucky are we that we're able to?
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That's
all
really
right,
beautiful.
Win of the week.
Win of the week. Fuck. My win of the week. You know where it's going.
Back to happy
Back
stuff.
to happiness, baby. So my win of the week is I have restarted meal prepping like a maniac, right? I've noticed in the morning I've been waking up early, 5 a.m.
Ooh, look at you.
I know. I've been waking up early because I got a long commute and I got to be there like 8:30. It takes me like 45 minutes to get there. So I'm like, I got to,
I'm proud of you. I remember you saying that was your goal, and you're staying committed to yourself. You're feeding that right wolf. That's awesome.
Right, man. I love breakfast. I know, man. I swear, every person I talk to, they're not big on breakfast. I don't know what the deal is. I don't know. My dad and I were freaking freaks for breakfast. But in the morning, I do not feel like cooking at all. I just woke up, dude. I'll wake up and then I'll go to the gym, right? I don't want to have to come back home and then leave again. So I'll go to the gym, shower, and then leave, go to work from there. So what I'm starting to do is I don't need breakfast. That's the thing. I don't need it. I enjoy it. And I'm trying to hit a certain level of protein, right? So what I've been doing is I've been making some overnight oatmeals with some protein powder to kind of, rather than eating my lunch at like 11 a.m., like burning that, and then the rest of the day, I'm like, damn, I can't wait for dinner tonight. like no. I'm gonna have my overnight oats when I at the gym, because they have like a nice area where you can like chill, like sit, and I'm like, eat my overnight oats. It's great.
Are you still going to that super fancy gym?
Yeah.
Look at.
I like it, man. A lot of it for me it's mindset training. It's like when I wear a tight shirt, kind of like how I'm wearing today, I feel confident, right? My hair is combed and gelled. It looks good. I don't like a maniac, right? I walk tall. You know, it's all about how you frame. Life is about how you frame it, guys, right? For me, I get value out of the more expensive gym. When I walk in, it smells like lavender. They got so many TVs. You know, I'm wooed. I get excited to go, right? I get really excited. Plus, I see Cybertrucks in the parking lot. And I'm like, oh, gets me going. Anyway, I know you
made it.
I made it. Like, no, that's not yours. I don't care. I see it.
It's like when I use my credit card points to go to places that I can't afford normally, and I'm like, yes, I've made it.
This is exactly the same. Also, actually, I just remembered I have a second win of the week. I'm gonna say this right now. Okay, so I have a friend moving out to Arizona, and they're like, hey, can I come visit you for a couple days, like 4 or 5 days, right? I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And I recently flew out to see them. One way, it was very expensive. Very expensive. I'll be honest. Okay, it was like $350 one way. Crazy. I checked Southwest, or like 2-3 months out, right? No, we're like a month and a half out. $26 there and back. I'm like, dude, what are we doing, bro? 120, basically $120. Like, that's crazy. That's so cheap. So big shout out to Chris for putting me onto the Southwest game. But yeah, that, and I restarted my meal prepping. I'm trying to eat more ground beef to kind of beef up the protein. I'm trying to get size. Chris, you guys can't tell. Chris is jacked.
I don't know about that, but okay.
Bro, the forearms on this guy, they're like, you see my head, they're close. I have a very large melon head, but they're very close. I'm like, dude, I gotta beef up a little bit. Anyway, trying to get my protein up, trying to get my health up, all that fun stuff. Chris, floor is yours. Win of the week time. What is your win of the week, sir?
My win of the week is I was so excited for the Samsung ring. I really wanted to get a good ring that could track my stuff. And I waited because I was going to get the Aura. And then my friend Dominic here told me that the Aura has a subscription cost. And I was like, F that. I'm not going to pay $400 for a thing and pay a subscription. I think it's like $300 in a subscription, which after 2 years would be the same. So I waited for damn near 9 months for the Samsung ring to release. And then it released and I read all the reviews and they are not great for the Samsung ring for the price. It's $400. And I was like, damn it, I waited all this time for this stupid ring and now it's not coming out. So it forced me, it forced me to be innovative and start looking at other things. So I looked into the Ringcon ring and I saw that so many people were like, hey, this is actually a really good ring. And it's like half the price of the ring of a different ring, or of the higher tier rings. And I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll get a Ringcon. And then I was doing some more research and I found that the Ringcon Gen 2 is releasing in September. And right now if you pre-order them, you can get them for $100 less than when they release on their official release date. So I have just bought it or purchased it now. So they're going to send me over a sizing kit and everything. And then when it officially releases, I will get it at basically $90 less than when it releases to the general public.
Let's go. Let's freaking go. And that was on Kickstarter?
Yeah, it was on Kickstarter.
Heck, dude, Kickstarter got some cool stuff on there. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, the biggest thing I was like, man, I don't really want to do a ring like that because if the company goes under, then it's like, then that ring is basically worthless. But my thought process is it's still going to be half the price of the Samsung Galaxy ring that I wanted.
Yeah.
And the ring's been around for like 4 years now. And all the reviews for the Gen 1 is really good. And I think they said they wanted like, I don't know, $50,000 or $500,000 in like official campaign people for people to like get on the campaign for them to release the Gen 2.
Yeah.
I think they're over like $2.7 million of people have already pledged. So I think this company's going to be around.
Yeah. And it's like Samsung's probably going to, they're going to update their ring eventually. They're going to new generation. So if you wanted to switch in a couple years, you could if you wanted to. So it's like, it's a win-win. It's a win-win. So I'm a nerd. What are we talking about capability-wise? What are we talking? Is it calories or steps? Sleep?
Yeah, steps, calories, heart rate monitoring. This one's supposed to have a sleep apnea, an O2 thing too, for like how much oxygen you're getting.
Yeah.
They're probably not going to work super well because even the watches don't work very well. But so, I mean, for me, it's really going to be heart rate monitoring and steps. This is what I want it for. And a lot of it's for jiu-jitsu because I don't like wearing a wrist. I don't like wearing a watch for jiu-jitsu. I don't like wearing a whoop strap for jiu-jitsu. But a ring, I've rolled with my ring on before and it's totally fine. It's really just for jiu-jitsu and for walking because I like to walk a lot and I don't like taking my phone with me very often. So at least I can still keep my step counter just to make sure I'm still sticking to my 10,000 steps or so a day.
That's awesome. That's sick.
I can get the cold plunge with it without it breaking.
That's true. I hope.
I hope. We'll see.
I hope. Yeah. I hope. I want to just keep that hand, just like that finger, the ring finger. Yeah, keep it above water.
Up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's freaking awesome. That's freaking sick. Yeah. I think I loved my Apple Watch. I lost. I don't know. I haven't had it for like 7 months. It's killing me, breaking me down inside. I don't know where it went. And I never lose anything. Like I always know where everything's at. So it's really weird. But I honestly like. I love the idea of the ring. I really like. If I got married, I'd be like saying I'd swap it. Like I want a traditional ring, but I'm gonna swap it for like the day-to-day use. Yeah,
I think my wife's gonna be way happier because I'm very rarely wear my ring. Like I don't like wearing rings. This one's made out of rubber, so I'll wear this one more often. But I don't like wearing the metal ring. But like, hey, if it's tracking all these other things too, and it makes my wife happy because I'm wearing a ring, that's like double wins.
Your wife is like the one who put you, like she like implanted the idea. It's like, okay, so what you have to do if you want a habit to stick, you got to attach it to another habit. What is Chris like? Fitness, health, bam, wearable ring, smart tech, genius play. Dude, it's awesome.
Probably she probably manipulated me from day one.
Oh, your wife's
she's far smarter than me.
Dude, they're genius, man. You gotta watch out for them females, man. They're smart. They're smart as a whip. My goodness. Well, that's our win of the week. That's some good win of the weeks right there. My goodness. Well, now I'm hungry, so I'm gonna go get some food or do something. I go to the gym. I don't know. We'll see.
I don't know. Well, guys, thank you so much for sticking around. I know this was a different podcast than we typically do. A lot more philosophy, not so much on what the 30 money rules, but talking around the framework of the 30 money rules. So if you like this type of way of doing things, like the philosophy more, liked all this stuff, and you want us to bring that to Monday's pods, please leave it in the comments. Let us know exactly what you're looking for. We're here to serve you. And I enjoy these types of conversations, but I also enjoy teaching Dominic. So whatever you guys want to do, I'm happy with it. So until next week, please leave a comment. But most importantly, tell a friend about the Fi Guys. Bring someone along for this journey of financial independence. It is so much more fun if you go with a friend than going alone.
Absolutely. With that being said, guys, hope you have a great weekend, a great week ahead. Stay happy, stay healthy, make good choices, and we'll see you in the next one.
Later.
Peace.
This video podcast is sponsored by Monzon Wealth. The content in this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice. We do not endorse specific products or services. Past performance does not guarantee future results. The opinions expressed are those of the host and guests, not the podcast sponsor.
It is crucial to consult with a qualified financial advisor or professional who can provide advice tailored to your specific needs before making any financial decisions, investments, or taking any other actions. If you are seeking specified help, you can reach out to Chris at monzonwealth.com.